a mother. She dedicated her life to her children. But now, she has become a servant in her own home. Her silent cries went unheard. Until someone finally discovered the truth. After years away, a son returns home. And he won't believe what he sees. Justice or family ties? Which will prevail? When the truth comes to light, nothing will ever be the same again. Maria, 75 years old, wiped down the kitchen counter with her tired hands as her daughter Clara's harsh voice echoed off the cold walls of the kitchen. It's still dirty. You need to be more careful when you clean. Everything has to be spotless before my guests arrive. Maria straightened up slightly, her knees weren't as strong as they once were. The weight of the years had worn not only her body but her spirit as well. With a weary smile on her face, she turned to her daughter. I'm almost done, sweetie, she said softly. But these words now pained her. For years, Maria had been treated more like a worker than a mother in this house. Even in her own home, she felt like a guest, growing more and more isolated with each passing day. It hadn't always been like this. After her husband passed away, Maria had been the kind of mother willing to do anything for her children. She worked tirelessly to give her son Michael and her daughter Clara the best education. Michael had always been responsible, hardworking, and disciplined. He achieved great things at a young age and had moved to Singapore to work for an international law firm. Clara, however, was different. Since she was young, she had been used to getting everything she wanted. Her mother had always spoiled her, treating her like a little princess. But over the years, this indulgence had turned into selfishness. Her own desires came before everything else. After losing her husband, Maria had dedicated herself entirely to her children, but now she was slowly realizing what that had cost her. Michael was doing his best to support his mother. He sent money regularly and thought she was living a good life. But what he didn't know was that Maria was living a life no different than that of a servant in Clara's home. Clara's house was orderly, but Maria's presence was necessary to keep that order intact. She woke up early every morning, prepared breakfast, washed the dishes, and cleaned every corner of the house. She cooked the meals, did the laundry, and even sometimes ironed Clara's clothes. But the hardest part was Clara's attitude toward her. Clara treated her not like a mother, but like a burden. Every task Maria did quietly was just expected. No thank you, no appreciation. Sometimes even condescending looks and dissatisfied comments. My God, look at this. There's still a stain on the table. How many times have I told you to be careful? Maria gently picked up the cloth, took a deep breath, and began wiping again. Her eyes filled with tears in that moment, but she quickly composed herself. She was at that age where tears no longer held any meaning. Last week, Clara had thrown a big party at her house. Maria had worked from morning till evening, striving to make everything perfect. She set up the tables, prepared the food, and decorated the house beautifully. Just minutes before the party started, while making the final adjustments in the kitchen, a guest entered. The woman approached Clara and asked, "Oh, who is this elegant lady?" Without hesitation, Clara answered, "My maid." In that moment, Maria felt like the world had crashed down on her. For a moment, she thought she had misheard. Her heart raced, and her throat tightened. Her own daughter had not hesitated to belittle her in front of her guests. Maria lowered her head and silently returned to the kitchen. That night, while everyone else was having fun, she sat in a corner of the kitchen, hands folded in her lap, lost in thought. Do I really belong here? But she had nowhere to go. Michael was too far away, and Clara had clearly made it known she didn't want her in her home. Who would take her in? She remembered a phrase taught to her long ago, a mother lives a life devoted to her children. But when her children grow up, no one remains for her. Maria thought back on the past. She remembered the moment she first held Clara in her arms, the nights she told her stories, and how she'd stayed by her side all night when she was sick. A mother did everything for her child. But when the child grew up, could they forget her? That night, the bitterness inside her turned into a silent scream. Once the heart of a warm home, Maria was now a stranger in her own house. And perhaps the worst part was that Clara was too selfish to even notice. Michael was working in Singapore at a fast pace. His job at an international law firm was filled with early morning meetings, documents to sign, and cases to solve, running from the crack of dawn until late at night. His phone was almost always ringing, with back-to-back calls from clients. But no matter how busy he was, he never failed to spare a few minutes each day to check in with his mother. When the phone rang, a faint smile would appear on Maria's face. No matter how brief the conversation, hearing her son's voice and knowing he was doing well brought her comfort. As she picked up the phone, her hands would tremble slightly, because she had to prepare herself to tell Michael that everything was fine. "Mom, how are you? How was your day?" Maria would take a deep breath to steady her voice and try to speak cheerfully. "I'm fine, sweetheart. How about you? Are you working a lot?" Michael would always give the same reply, "Busy, but good. Don't worry, everything's fine." Maria's response never changed either, "Everything's fine here, sweetie." But that was a lie. The truth was much more painful. Maria wasn't telling her son the truth. If she did, she knew Michael would drop everything and come to her from Singapore without a second thought. She couldn't let him jeopardize the career he had worked so hard for over the years. She didn't want to worry him. She buried her own pain, adding a false sense of calm to her voice, pretending everything was okay. Clara would listen to these phone calls with jealousy and mockery. Rolling her eyes, she would imitate her mother's voice, saying, "Mommy, how are you?" as though Michael's concern for his mother bothered her. After hanging up, she would turn to Maria with a sharp look. "Do you tell him everything?" she would ask, her voice dripping with sarcasm. Maria would shake her head. "I just told him I'm fine." Clara would purse her lips and laugh mockingly. "What a thoughtful mother you are. Lying to protect his peace. Bravo." Maria would want to say something to Clara, but her voice wouldn't come. She would feel as though she had no right to speak, even in her own home. But inside, there was fear. How much longer could this go on? As Clara's attitude toward her grew harsher, was it right to keep the truth from Michael? What would happen if one day Michael found out what kind of life his mother was truly living? The more Maria thought about it, the more an indescribable anxiety filled her. The day when the truth would come out was bound to come. But when that day arrived, would it be too late? Michael always felt like something was missing amidst his hectic work schedule. He called his mother every day, wanting to hear that she was doing well, but the restlessness inside him never seemed to fade. Maria acted calm and happy during their conversations, but Michael could hear the weariness, the fragility in her voice, and he felt like she was hiding something. That night, as he worked late in his office, he stared blankly at his computer screen. His thoughts always drifted back to his mother. There was a sense of unease he couldn't understand, as if something was wrong. "I can't wait any longer," he said to himself. "I need to see my mom." He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and immediately began checking flights. He booked a ticket for the next day. He realized there was no reason to wait any longer. Sitting on the plane, he looked out the window. The strange unease inside him grew with every passing hour. For some reason, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about Clara. His mother always told him that everything was fine, but Michael wasn't sure if that was the truth. After days of travel and waiting, Michael finally arrived home. His heart raced with excitement. He was about to see his mother for the first time in months. He couldn't wait to see her warm smile, the love in her eyes. Along the way, he had remembered the chocolate cake his mother used to make when he was a child, and he wanted to surprise her. As he left the airport, he picked up a fresh slice from her favorite bakery, along with a few small gifts. When he reached the door, he took a deep breath. "Mom! I'm home," he called out, knocking on the door. But there was no response from inside. He furrowed his brows. Normally, his mother would excitedly open the door and hug him. Something felt off. He knocked again, calling out a bit louder. "Mom! I'm here. Open the door." Silence. The unease that rose within him quickly turned into sharp worry. He took out his spare keys from his pocket, his hands trembling slightly. He inserted the key into the lock, turned it, and opened the door. The sight that greeted him took his breath away. His mother was kneeling on the kitchen floor, scrubbing the surface with a small brush. Her faded apron was stained, and her face was weary, her eyes shadowed by exhaustion. She had lost weight and appeared weaker than before. Her back was slightly bent, as if the weight of the years and burdens had settled on her shoulders. And Clara. She was sprawled on the couch, looking at her phone. One leg was casually crossed over the other as she scrolled through the screen. Clara didn't even lift her head as Michael walked in. The cake in Michael's hands fell to the floor. The cardboard box opened, and the chocolate cream smeared onto the carpet, but Clara didn't seem to care. "Mom." His voice was hoarse and confused. When Maria saw Michael, she immediately stood up, wiping her hands on her apron and hurriedly walking toward him. She forced a smile on her face, but her voice trembled. "Oh, Michael. You're here. Well, this is a surprise," she said. Michael narrowed his eyes, feeling that something was terribly wrong. He looked around, the atmosphere in the house felt heavy and cold. He noticed the exhaustion on his mother's face, the cracks in her hands, and the slight trembling of her knees. Then he turned to Clara. They locked eyes. Clara rolled her eyes and returned to her phone as if nothing had happened. Michael's face tightened, his brows furrowed. Something was very wrong in this house. And he was determined to find out what. The anger inside Michael felt like a heavy weight pressing down on his chest. His stomach tightened, and his heart raced. The scene before him confirmed all his doubts. His mother looked tired, worn out, and fragile. The strong woman she had once been was gone, replaced by someone who quietly submitted. He took a deep breath and fixed his gaze on his mother. "Is there something you're not telling me, Mom?" Maria immediately shook her head, pressing her hands tighter to her apron, speaking in a rushed tone. "No, sweetie. Everything's fine. Sometimes I just get caught up in housework." But Michael wasn't going to fall for these lies anymore. His mother's voice trembled. Her hands looked worn, not from the fatigue of age but from the heavy labor she had endured. Her cracked skin, worn nails, weakening body. None of this was just keeping busy. And most of all, Clara's indifferent attitude. Michael turned his head to face her. Clara was still sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone. She didn't even lift her eyebrows, acting as if Michael wasn't even there. Michael took a deep breath, trying to control the anger inside him. But enough was enough. He had seen the truth, the one his mother had never told him, right before his eyes. He wouldn't accept it as it was. "Mom, we're leaving. Now." Maria shook her head in panic, clutching her apron as if holding onto it would somehow make everything return to normal. "No, Michael. It's unnecessary. I don't want you to be upset." Michael took a deep breath and looked into his mother's tired eyes. "What doesn't upset me is you being happy, Mom." Maria avoided his gaze. For years, she had suppressed her own needs and feelings, living for everyone else. Now Michael stood before her, and he wasn't asking her to think of him, but to face the truth. "But Clara." A mocking smile appeared on Clara's lips. She leaned back on the couch, tilting her head, looking at Michael with a nonchalant attitude. "There's no need for drama, Michael. She's staying here by her own choice." Michael clenched his jaw, the anger in his eyes becoming even more apparent. By her own choice, he repeated, his voice dangerously calm. Is that so? Then explain this to me, Clara. I'm covering all the expenses for this house. I send her money every month so she can live comfortably. If she's living here by her own choice, then why didn't you just hire a maid? Clara rolled her eyes. You're exaggerating, Michael. But Michael didn't back down. He pointed at his mother. Look at her. She's lost so much weight. Her face is pale, her hands are cracked. Is that normal to you? How could you let my mother waste away in front of my eyes? Clara sighed, closed her eyes tightly, then opened them again, her voice now colder. Michael, she's doing this because she wants to. I haven't forced her to do anything. Michael laughed, but it was a bitter, angry laugh. Because she wants to. My mother told me everything was fine. But why? Because she knows if she told me the truth, I'd get on a plane and come here, and your comfort would be ruined. The smile on Clara's face began to fade, but she still resisted. She lives here, of course, she'll help out a little. I don't understand why you're making such a big deal out of it. Michael clenched his fists. He looked at his mother, those sad eyes. He could never allow her to stay here under these conditions any longer. He took a deep breath and made his final decision. Get ready, Mom. We're leaving today. If Clara needs a maid, she can hire one with her own money. But in this house, you will never be treated like a maid again. Clara, stunned by Michael's determination, was speechless. But Michael had made his decision. And no one was going to make him change his mind. Clara's face turned bright red with anger. When she realized Michael's seriousness, the panic inside her grew even stronger. What does this mean? She yelled, her voice shrill. Are you saying you're not going to send money anymore? Michael shot her a cold glance. Exactly that. Did you think I'd continue covering the costs of this house? While you treat my mother like a maid, I keep paying for your comfort. Clara's eyes widened in shock. She was almost breathless. Michael, you don't know how much I earn. My salary doesn't even cover rent. Michael shook his head dismissively. I don't care, Clara. You've used my mother for your own benefit. Now, deal with the consequences. Clara stared at him for a moment, stunned. Was he really going to do this? Was he leaving her to handle the household expenses alone? He had never been this firm and uncompromising before. Michael, you can't do this, she said angrily. How am I supposed to get by on my own here? Michael narrowed his eyes, watching Clara panic. But there wasn't the slightest hint of remorse inside him. Do whatever you want, Clara. Financing your life is not my problem. Without saying another word, he slammed the door behind him and walked out. Maria, confused by what had just happened, suddenly found herself outside in the cold air, Michael guiding her toward the parking lot with a suitcase in his hand. Michael, sweetie, wasn't this a bit too much? She asked nervously. Michael turned to face her and spoke with a soft yet determined expression. Mom, this couldn't go on. I don't want you staying there anymore. We're staying in a hotel, and then we're going to Singapore. I'll get all your paperwork ready. Maria paused. She grabbed his hand, stopping him. But Michael. How can I leave here? My whole life has been here. Clara is still my daughter. Michael looked her in the eyes. Your daughter? Did you see how she's treated you? Mom, you don't have a family there. I'm your family now, and I'll never leave you. Maria lowered her head. There was a deep sense of sadness in her. Part of her wanted to be with her son, but the other part was scared to leave behind the life and the habits she had known for so long. Michael tightened his grip on her hand. I promise you, Mom, everything will be so much better. But first, we need to get out of here. Maria, with trembling hands, squeezed his hand back. The fear was still there, but for the first time in years, she felt truly valued. And maybe, for the first time in all these years, it was time for her to do something for herself. They stayed in the hotel for 3 days. Michael wanted his mother to feel a little more at ease. During those 3 days, he kept an eye on her, made sure she had good meals, and did everything he could to ensure she rested. At first, Maria was uneasy, but over time, she began to feel more secure. Meanwhile, Clara kept calling. At first, she was angry, shouting during their conversations. "This isn't fair, Michael. You left me to handle the expenses of this house alone. You've taken my mother away from me." Michael calmly hung up the phone. Then Clara's tone started to change, softening a bit, but Michael no longer fell for her tactics. "Please, Michael, don't be so harsh. Mom was happy living here. Ask her, she'll tell you." Michael shook his head and put the phone on silent. When he looked at his mother, Maria smiled and nodded. "Yes, she needs to learn a lesson. You're right. But please don't take me back. Let Clara take care of herself, let her take on more responsibility." Michael furrowed his brow. He wasn't expecting this. "Mom, this place isn't safe for you. I'm taking you to Singapore. You'll be at peace there." Maria sighed and held Michael's hands. "Son, I know your intentions are good, but moving to a new country, starting a completely new life, would be too hard for me. I've spent my whole life here. Put me in a nursing home if you must. I want to make my own decision." Michael was beside himself. "Mom, I can't leave you. I trusted Clara, but she's used you. I promise you, you'll have a wonderful life in Singapore. You don't have to go to a nursing home." Maria looked at him lovingly. "I know, son. But I want to be free. I've spent my whole life with people telling me what to do. For the first time, I want to make my own decision." Michael thought about his mother's words. He couldn't force her. But he couldn't bear the thought of leaving her alone again. "Mom, are you sure you'll be okay in the nursing home? Are you sure?" Maria took a deep breath. "I don't know, Michael. But I want to try." Michael realized that he had no choice but to respect his mother's decision. Her happiness was more important than anything else, and if she truly wanted to be in the nursing home, he would ensure she had the best there was. Clara, however, began searching for a job once she no longer received the financial support she had become used to. Michael sent her one last message: "You need to learn to stand on your own feet. It's time to take responsibility." At first, Clara resisted, still believing that Michael would eventually return. But as time passed, she realized no one would finance her life. She started looking at job listings, going to interviews, and finally landed a job on her own. It was tough at first, but gradually her perspective on life began to change. Meanwhile, Maria settled into the nursing home that Michael had arranged for her. But it wasn't just any nursing home. Michael had found a center that offered the best facilities, sports areas, a library, a variety of activities, and a large garden. It was a place where she could live an active and social life. At first, Maria felt uneasy. She wasn't used to focusing on herself after years of dedicating her life to her family. But as time passed, she warmed to the place. She met new people, had conversations, participated in arts and crafts, and even started taking yoga classes. Her days were full, and she was at peace, no longer needing to serve anyone. Months went by. Clara, having learned from her struggles, had become more mature and understanding. She now truly grasped the depth of the love and sacrifices her mother had made for her all those years. One day, without any expectations, Clara visited the nursing home. She found her mother sitting in the garden. Her eyes filled with tears as she approached her, filled with regret, and gently embraced her. "Mom!" Maria, startled, pulled back slightly, then wrapped her arms around Clara. "Clara! Tears welled up in Maria's eyes, but this time, it wasn't sadness, it was the peace that came with forgiveness. She no longer wanted to carry the weight of the past. Both of them cried quietly, holding each other tightly. All the accumulated resentment seemed to vanish in that moment. The next day, another visitor came to see Maria. Michael appeared at the door, accompanied by his wife from Singapore. Maria was delighted to see her daughter-in-law, but the real surprise was in the young woman's belly. "My son." Michael smiled, holding his mother's hands. "Mom, it's time to prepare you for being a grandmother. We're 6 months pregnant." Maria's eyes filled with tears, and with joy, she placed her hand on her daughter-in-law's belly. This news made everything even more meaningful. It was time for Michael to build his home. After years in Singapore, he had decided to settle here, close to his mother. The company had offered him a great opportunity, and he would now be working as the regional manager here. Maria felt proud of him. But she knew she didn't want to be part of a new routine. She had spent years adjusting to others, moving according to their lives. Now, she had her own routine. She didn't want to leave her friends or her peaceful life behind. As Michael and Clara sat in the garden of the nursing home, discussing this matter, Clara understood everything better now. "Mom lived for us for years. Now, it's time for her to live a little for herself." Michael nodded and smiled. "Yeah, but at least we'll visit her every day. Because being a family isn't just about living in the same house, it's about always feeling each other." Michael and Clara embraced their mother. That day, they left the past grievances behind and made a new start. Maria was no longer alone, and Michael and Clara had learned to truly value their mother. And so began a new chapter, a healthier and more loving life, where everyone was where they needed to be. Real stories, powerful emotions. For new and inspiring stories every day, please subscribe.